obviously the hot topic on everyone's mind right now is the elections, both in personal lives, but also professionally. And I know that that is something that we've been talking with our clients quite a lot about in recent weeks and months, and just thinking about how we plan for the deluge of news that's going to arise out of the elections, and how we shape plans for upcoming comms campaigns with that in mind, and just thinking about what our strategy is to account for that noise and how that may disrupt the media cycles. So this is something Tom and I have been talking about quite a bit too, so we thought we'd jump on here and chat a little bit about it today.
We've been having a lot of conversations with clients about how to best proceed, how to maintain business goals and objectives around share of voice and make sure that you're getting your messages across to your customers, and how to capitalize on a media that is kind of dedicating a lot of their coverage to specific outside variables, whether it's the election or COVID. The question inevitably arises from clients about how to capitalize on that, whether you need to adjust messaging to get in on that conversation, whether you need to find other opportunities to get your messaging across, where your customers are at, and as well as kind of, if your customers even care about that conversation, or whether you can weigh in on that conversation. I know specifically if there's a few clients of mine who are tangentially related to things like election security, but they don't have the specific expertise to actually drive that conversation forward. So there's always the push and pull of, well, this is where the conversations are happening, and we need to be involved in it so we don't fall behind in terms of competitors, and our competitors are getting coverage. But then there's the pushback of, we can't actually add value to that conversation, or we need to actually find how we can add value to that conversation before we input into it. Are these kind of similar conversations to what you're having?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And to your point earlier as well, it's something that we faced with COVID, and then we're discussing again with the elections right now. So it's really just thinking about, does it make sense not only from the perspective of can we add value to this conversation in the media, but also does it really align with objectives? For B2B technology companies, does it really make sense to weigh in on these issues? And I think it really needs to be a case-by-case approach. So election security, if there's a tie in there, or if there's a public sector customer target or prospect target that one of our clients has, then developing that perspective not only adds value to the media, but also ties back to the company's objectives. But if that's different than their core offering, their area of expertise, or the kinds of companies that they want to go after and message to, then even if there is that tie, it may not make sense. And in other cases, there may not be that direct tie from what a B2B tech company does and what's happening with the elections or with COVID, and that's totally fine as well. One thing I know that we've been doing for clients whose messaging doesn't have a tie that's authentic and strategic to the elections is thinking about how we can leverage content and social media to continue getting our messaging out there and continue having conversations with customers and with our key audiences during a time when the media may be focused on other things rather than business as usual. Sponsored content is another really great vehicle that allows us to have some placements in media, but control over when that content is coming out that's not dependent on the news cycle that reporters are going to be sifting through every day. So I think it really is just important to do a case-by-case plan per client that is shaped based on their target publications, because each publication is going to be different in their coverage as well, and also shaped by the comms priorities that they have in November and beyond. And I think that the media landscape has always been evolving, but like so many other things in 2020, I think the pace of that evolution has just accelerated and changed with things like COVID and with this very interesting election that we're coming up against. And so I think looking ahead to 2021, comms professionals are going to have to be a lot more agile and a lot more adaptable in our approaches rather than just relying on the tactics that have always worked in the past.
And I like your point about it being a case-by-case basis. There really isn't any hard and fast rule about how to handle every situation. And one thing you noted was how the general business and general interest press is kind of really focusing on these topics. And you had noted how the tech press is really following suit. And even beyond that, we're seeing it a lot in trades, specifically with some of our health tech clients. They're affected by both the election and COVID because there's a lot of unknowns about how health tech policy is going to change. Things like telehealth or regulations are changing they changed for COVID and now they're changing back as things are reopening. But if things start to close again, how does that impact that again? Then, on top of that, you have the election and what each candidate's health platform looks like. So, there's so many different variables. Sometimes it makes more sense to kind of change your strategy and find the channels where either there's a reporter who's looking for a counter story. One of the things we noticed a lot during COVID were reporters taking to social media saying, I'm a little tired of getting pitched COVID stories and COVID angles time and time again, day after day, hour after hour. There are paths to kind of finding your own niche little area to kind of carve out for yourself, whether it's, like you said, on social platforms, on owned platforms, through contributed content and bylines, through sponsored opportunities, or just through finding reporters who are looking for other things. So the opportunities are kind of out there, and sometimes it makes sense to shift your strategy. Sometimes it makes sense to shift your messaging. But like you said, being kind of agile and willing to go on the fly and kind of pivot on the turn of a dime or something is kind of definitely a best practice that you should be able to talk through with your clients on a weekly basis, even a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think the point about messaging that you made is a really good one. You want to stay true to who you are and true to the messaging that is going to make an impact for your business. We do think that there is value in having sensitivity to what's going on in the broader world, whether you're putting your messaging out on social or in owned content or speaking with the media. Just having that awareness of what else is happening and sensitivity to current events is obviously PR best practice 101,
Yeah.
but something that definitely there's a heightened focus in 2020.
These conversations are only going to become more prevalent. So these are conversations that any PR professional or marketing professional has to be having consistently with both internally and with their clients, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page and make sure all of your bases are covered and kind of you always have that strategic counsel that you can offer and are always thinking of what's next as opposed to what happened in the past.
Yeah. So I think one of the main takeaways here is that there are a lot of different paths to getting your message across and meeting your objectives through comms, but that unpredictability, I think, is going to continue to be the theme for the foreseeable future. So as we've mentioned a bunch of times, this is something that we're deep in the weeds with clients working through for the elections, but I think will continue to be something that we're talking about and shifting strategy on an ongoing basis as we would normally, but based on what's happening in the world as well. So if you are a company out there and you're trying to think about how to get your message out there, whether it's you have a huge product launch coming up, some funding, and you want to make sure that it doesn't get lost in the noise of the elections or other current events that are happening, reach out. We'd be happy to chat with you about some ways that you can get your message out there and sort of navigate the media landscape as things continue to change.